11:03, Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. Welcome into today's edition of The Lunch Break. Chris Schubert with you as always, KDUS AM 1060, always on the KDUS AM 1060 app. And yesterday, we finally got it. We have been long awaiting this to happen. Weeks and weeks of conversation about it happening. And last night, it finally did.
Time for our top story of the day. It's the Daily Special.
You weren't thinking I was talking about a Jimmy Butler trade, right? You didn't think I was talking about a Bradley Beal move, right? Because we might have to wait a couple more weeks for that. No, we finally got the blowout victory from the Phoenix Suns that we've been looking for. They finally were able to take a game and have it in hand. Not worry about it, not stress about it. As they finished up their road trip last night, a 108-84 victory over the Brooklyn Nets, who aren't trying, who are injured. And the Phoenix Suns took care of business. Devin Booker led the way with 32. Kevin Durant followed that up with 24. And you know it's a good night. That doesn't matter for how many minutes. But when you pull up a box score from a basketball game and everybody on the court got a chance to play. Everybody that you brought with you drew into the lineup. That's how you know things went well last night for the Phoenix Suns. And they finished off that road trip 3-2. And listen, there's been a lot of negativity surrounding this team. There's been a lot of criticism surrounding this team. I think we've been driving the bus on that a little bit. Critical of some of the performances, critical of some of the moves, critical of the direction of this team. But before this road trip started, way back 5 games ago, we said, hey, go on the road, take care of business, go 3-2. That's a successful road trip. That is a nice road trip. That puts us back on a good track. And so I am not going to all of a sudden pull the rug out from underneath the Phoenix Suns today. They did exactly what we asked them to do. And so we get caught up in the game-to-game, night-to-night, day-to-day of the Phoenix Suns. But overall, we said when you looked at this schedule, you had Washington, you had Brooklyn. You thought those were 2 easy wins. Find me one other one and have a successful 3-2 road trip. And that is exactly what the Suns accomplished last night by blowing out the Brooklyn Nets. And I think importantly so, taking care of the Brooklyn Nets to where Kevin Durant only had to play 30 minutes last night. I thought you could have gotten Devin Booker a little bit more rest in that game last night where he didn't have to play 36 minutes. But you look across, you got everybody involved last night. That's good. Keep the legs fresh because you end this 5-game road trip. You come home, you have a game on Saturday against a Washington team that you should be able to take care of. Now you start to potentially get the ball rolling as we all circle one date on the calendar. It's February 6th because that is the NBA trade deadline. That is the day where between now and then we're going to determine, we're going to know the future of this team, what direction they are going in. And I think that's where I want to start today. And trust me, we got a lot. We got a lot of Bradley Beal. We got a lot of Jimmy Butler again. Just the soap opera that, just like a regular soap opera, every day there's something new. There's just always something new for us to discuss. But where I'm at with this team right now is, and I'm watching the game last night, driving home, listening on the radio. I had to stop at the store, so I've got the game on my phone and watching it in and out of the store last night, listening to it on the way home. I get home finally for the third and fourth quarter, have it up on the tablet. I'm watching this game, and they're comfortable. They look good, and they're up as many as 14 at one point in the fourth quarter, and you didn't know if the Nets were going to respond because they had kind of been going on short little runs to bring it close, and then the Suns blew the doors off of it, and you end up with a 108-84 victory. And I don't know if it was just because of the start time for the game or what. The game was over, and I was just like, all right, cool. Great. And I don't think that's the fault of anybody involved. It's a fault of the situation that we find ourselves in. It's hard to live and die, to overreact or underreact to any of these games because we all know that this roster is going to be different in 2 weeks. We know that between now and February 6th, if the Suns do what we all think they're trying to do and what it looks like they're efforting to do, this roster is going to look a lot different. This roster is going to remove a superstar and potentially replace him with another superstar. This team might replace the center that they traded for a couple seasons ago and then had to trade for his replacement a few weeks ago. And who knows what other tricks might be up the sleeve of James Jones and the Suns front office and Matt Ishbia and this team as they chart the course for what the next couple of weeks are going to look like. And so it's hard to look at this team right now and look at what they're doing and put stock into anything, put value into anything, because you and I both know this is not going to be the team on February 7th. This is not going to be the team on February 8th. This is not going to be the team that hopefully is able to make it into the postseason. You know how when you get to the postseason in sports, you draw back on experiences or moments or series or different games throughout the course of the year to say that battle-tested, you're ready? This Suns team might look vastly different in 2 weeks. And so I can't put anything into what they did last night, at least not yet. If they do nothing between now and the trade deadline, and this is the group, I can put something into this. But this team is going to look extremely different in 2 weeks. It's going to have a new superstar, and there's going to be an acclimation period, and there's going to be games that it's going to take for them to gel, for them to find a rhythm, to be on the same page. And that team, I can't evaluate yet. I can't evaluate a Phoenix Suns team with Jimmy Butler and without Bradley Beal. I can't evaluate a Phoenix Suns team that potentially could replace Jusuf Nurkic, who's not doing anything for this team right now, with somebody else who could be a contributor. We'll just throw the Patrick Williams rumors out there as one example. I can't evaluate a team that might trade Grayson Allen. With everything that's out there for this team right now, it's why we refer to it as a soap opera. With everything that's out there surrounding this team right now, how am I supposed to look at last night's game other than, hey, nice job? You got to win. You finished the road trip 3-2. You did exactly what we asked. You come back home. You're one game above 500. Okay, let's go. Let's see what you're able to do. And unfortunately, I think that's how it's going to be the remainder of the time between now and maybe not February 6th, but between now and when they trade for Jimmy Butler, or if they trade for Jimmy Butler, because we got to put that bold capital letter if in front of this now. We'll tell you why in about half hour now or so from now. But things have changed. This is a ever-evolving landscape. The rumors are constantly cycling. They're constantly changing. I was having a conversation with somebody in the building this morning, and I said out loud, as somebody who's in the weeds on this every single day, reading stories, watching games, reading reports, seeing what this reporter's saying, seeing what this person's saying, that person's saying, trying to put it all together, trying to piece together the picture here to try to give you an opinion so we can have a conversation here on this show. I was explaining to a person in the building this morning, I need a PhD to understand what's going on right now. This reporter is saying this, that reporter's saying, no, that's not true, this is true. Then there's a third reporter that says they're both wrong, it's actually this, and Bradley Beal might want to waive his no-trade clause to Milwaukee. It is a lot. And so because of that, I think, unfortunately, it makes a game like last night just kind of fade into the background. It's nice. It was nice to win. It was nice to end the road trip the way that they did. It was nice to accomplish the goal of being 3-2 on this road trip. I'm sure they wanted to win all 5, but we said we would have been happy with 3-2, and so they did that. So in our minds, successful road trip, check. A blowout win, check. We've been waiting for that for weeks, months. Take care of business. Now I get to come home. Maybe you start to get the snowball rolling a little bit down the hill. But it all gets lost in everything else, because it's the everything else that is going to determine the fate of this season. Not what they did last night against Brooklyn. Not what they did in this 5-game road trip. It's the everything else that could happen, that might happen over the next week and a half or so between now, January 23rd, and the NBA trade deadline on February 6th. It's the everything else that's going to determine the success or failure of the Phoenix Suns season. What they have done through the first 43 games ultimately might be meaningless. What they do between now and whether or not Jimmy Butler comes here might be meaningless, because this team, hopefully, the idea is going to be very different once Jimmy Butler gets here. And then that's the team that we need to evaluate. Now, you need to take care of business. You need to keep yourself afloat. You need to make it to where when you make that move, it's meaningful, it's impactful. You haven't given the season away. I don't think the Suns relatively care at this point. I think they're just going to push onward and push through no matter what. But that's what makes last night's game so difficult. watching a game, the game's over, and the Suns win, and I just found myself just kind of moving the tablet to the side and just moving on to the next thing that I had last night, the next chore that I needed to do. It felt like it was a chore last night. I didn't feel like I was watching the Phoenix Suns for enjoyment purposes. It felt like checking a box because we are moving forward to the more important stuff. And the more important stuff right now for the Phoenix Suns is not the basketball games, it's what they're doing with Bradley Beal. Are they really getting Jimmy Butler? And that is a scary place to be as a franchise. It is a weird balancing act when the outside noise is more important and more impactful than the actual on-field, on-court product. And for probably the last 2-3 weeks or so, and certainly between now and whenever this comes to a conclusion, that's going to continue to be the case. It's still going to hover over this team when they play on Saturday. It's still going to hover over this team up until there is some resolution, whether the trade deadline comes and goes or if the Suns actually get this over the finish line. And we have a lot about whether or not they're going to be able to get it over the finish line, and there are two sides to this story. There's the Jimmy Butler angle, and there's the Bradley Beal angle, and there is a lot. So we will get into it here over the course of the show. Appreciate you being here. 480-864-1060 is the phone number for you to hop in and join the conversation. Also, we've got you on the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube live stream. You can hop in over there as well. So a bunch of different ways for you to hop in to the conversation here over the next 2 hours or so. Coming up on the other side of the break. Listen, he's been at this a really long time. So what does he say that the Cardinals might be doing in April? That's next on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Make sure you download the KDUS AM 1060 app. You can take us with you on the go. You'll never miss anything. Just download the KDUS AM 1060 app today. This is one of my favorite times of the year, this in-between. Season's over for you as a football fan. Your team's out of it. Obviously, you'd like your team to be in it. We'd like to be previewing the Arizona Cardinals being in a conference championship game this weekend. But there is a fun little side quest that we can go on here, is this in-between. Between now and the new league year, between now and free agency starting, between now and the draft, the entire world is up to your own imagination. You can dream about whatever you want the Arizona Cardinals to do this offseason because nothing's happened yet. Nobody signs somewhere else. T. Higgins is probably going to be a free agent. Max Crosby hasn't been traded yet. You can dream whatever dream you want about the Arizona Cardinals. And so that allows us to react to everything. That allows us to just take in all this information and say, like that, don't like that, didn't think of that, that's interesting, no thank you, I'm good. You can go through all the different permutations. There's one person, when it comes to the NFL draft space, that has been doing this a long time. Probably the guy that invented the space, pretty much. That's ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr. And Mel, unlike a lot of other people, and trust me, I've been in the space. I am wearing today, I think I've referenced it on the show before, my Senior Bowl hat with the tagline, "The draft starts in Mobile." There's nobody that is more plugged into the draft here in this building or probably in this city than me. Been there, done that, have been to Senior Bowls, covered combines, have gone through this process. It's one of my favorite times of year. Mel Kiper waits. He's not like all these other people. We're not putting out mock drafts every other day. He waits. And he released his first mock draft for 2025 this week. And so I clicked. I scrolled. What's he got the Cardinals doing at 16? Now, it's just a mock draft. It's not the gospel. It's not the be-all, end-all. It's not a guarantee. But Mel Kiper is kind of the guy that points the direction. He hears things. He's also scouting these players. It can at least inform a discussion. And so his mock draft for the Arizona Cardinals at number 16 has them going in a specific direction. And I think whether or not you know about the player, whether or not you care about the player, the position and the direction, I think, tells us a lot. Because with the 16th pick in his mock draft, he has the Cardinals selecting guard Tyler Booker out of Alabama. But it is the first sentence from Mel Kiper's mock draft that I think frames it all. Quote, "I'd love for Arizona to land a pass rusher here after it finished 26th in pressure rate, 28.6%. But the board isn't cooperating." There is the important piece of information. Don't get hung up on, should I like Tyler Booker, or do I like that my team is taking an interior offensive lineman guard with the first-round pick? Don't get caught up in that. Get caught up in Mel wanted to give them an edge rusher because Mel's aware of what you and I are aware of, is that this team has trouble getting after the quarterback. But the board's not cooperating. Why do you think I keep telling everybody, hey, don't wait till April to solve this? Don't look towards a youth movement to solve this. Go out and be aggressive, be proactive, make the phone calls, try to get Max Crosby, try to trade for Myles Garrett, try to trade for Jeffrey Simmons. If you can't do that, sign a couple of veterans in free agency. Why do you think yesterday I said, hey, don't do the Khalil Mack thing? Go, pivot. I'm being very specific in the direction that I at least feel this team should go, because the draft might not be it. You've got 15 teams picking in front of you. You've got 15 teams that can mess up your ideal draft plans. And so if you wait all the way until April, and you wait all the way until you're on the clock with the number 16 pick, and you didn't sign a big-time pass rusher in free agency, you didn't trade for somebody in free agency, and then you sit there and you watch as all these other edges come off the board, right? Let's just go through the list. Abdul Carter not going to be there for you at 16. Mason Graham, the D tackle, interior defensive lineman, he's not going to be there at 16. You're not going to be able to get Mykel Williams out of Georgia. Jalon Walker out of Georgia. Just looking at all these defensive players. Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. Not getting any of these guys. They're not getting there. And so if you want to get the impactful defensive end, the impactful edge rusher, you're going to have to go out and do the work ahead of time. So I don't know if Tyler Booker would make sense. We know they need a guard. We've talked about this. That's where their hole lives on their offensive line, because they're going to have Will Hernandez and Evan Brown both be free agents. Their two guard spots, I think, are up in the air for 2025. And so it makes sense. But that's not my takeaway. My takeaway is the Cardinals are in a really weird spot in the draft. Because I don't think they're in a spot, because Mel points out a couple of other pass rushers that he would says are going to be there when they pick at 16, but might be a little bit of a reach. So opening up the door for Monty to do what Monty does, right? Let Monty cook. Let him wheel and deal. Put out those social media clips of him working the phones, pacing around the draft room, just wheeling and dealing, baby. Maybe that's the path they go. But it further emphasizes the 1A priority for the Cardinals this offseason is edge rusher. It's a non-negotiable. It is a non-starter. You're not going to be able to land somebody at 16 that's going to be impactful in a way that you need them to be in 2025. Going guard makes sense. Listen, we know the needs that this team has. We've talked about them. Interior offensive line, need another wide receiver. Probably could use another corner. Edge rusher, obviously, as mentioned. So a lot of needs and a lot of cap space and the draft picks to be able to do it. But in order to achieve a goal in the draft, the players have to be there for you. And so this is just one look, and it's just one mock draft. I'm sure you can find other mock drafts that have the Cardinals landing that edge player that you love, that makes sense, that you think is the perfect fit. But it goes back to what I've said from the beginning, is you have to know that that player is going to be able to be impactful from day one. You can't have the growing pains that you had with Marvin Harrison Jr. That position is too important, too impactful. It's one of the main reasons why you are sitting at home right now not playing in the postseason. You can't miss on this. You can't hope on this. You can't develop your way out of this. You need to hit a home run. You can't just hit a single or a double when it comes to that position, when it comes to that spot. And so this is the time of year where you can let your mind wander. You can start to dream of other scenarios. And I'm not naive. I know the Raiders say they're not open for business. I know that they say that Max Crosby isn't getting moved. Okay. Everybody says that until somebody ends up getting traded. Everybody says, no, not moving this guy. And then that person gets moved. It's always a no until it's a yes. And so if I'm the Cardinals, it is a full court press this offseason. It is an all-out blitz, to use the correct sport analogy. It is an all-out blitz to land a big fish at the edge department. You cannot leave this up to chance on draft night in April. You can't leave this up to, could somebody be there at 16 that we think, because this team took Marvin Harrison Jr. and they took Darius Robinson, and everybody said home run draft. Fantastic night one of the draft for the Arizona Cardinals. Just great job. Got the number one wide receiver, got a fantastic defensive player that's going to help turn things around. What happened? Did those players have the impacts that we all thought they were going to have? No, because you never know what the future will hold. I want to be able to get as sure of a thing as I can. I want to get the known commodity. I'd like to pair that known commodity with a player that I draft and develop. I'd like to develop my own superstar pass rusher. I'd like to develop my own Max Crosby. But I don't think that matches up with where the Cardinals are or what the Cardinals need to accomplish. And so if they don't bring back Will Hernandez or Evan Brown in free agency, then yeah, interior of the offensive line, if they don't fill those needs with free agent dollars, you're going to need to draft somebody. And the Cardinals are in the middle of the draft at 16, interesting spot, right? Ton of cap space, ton of needs. And right now, you can't address all of those needs with money, and you can't address all of those needs with draft picks. So it is a combination of what do we think we can achieve in free agency and what do we think is going to be available in the draft. And the way they attack free agency is going to tell you a lot about the way they think the draft is going to play out, and vice versa. Sometimes you'll see teams go heavy on offense. They have needs on both sides of the ball. They'll go heavy on offense in free agency because that's the way the class lines up. And then in the draft, they go heavy on defense. Sometimes you'll see the inverse. All depends on how you view the class, how you view your ability to land these players, how your needs match up dollar-wise with what you have available. And the Cardinals are in a very unique spot. They've got $70 million in cap space. They've got the draft picks. They don't have as many as they normally do. They don't have as many as they have had in years past under Monty Ossenfort. They have draft picks. They have all of the assets required to have a big offseason. And so Mel Kiper Jr., yesterday or the other day when he released this mock draft, he set the table. And he set the table with that first sentence of the board didn't cooperate. The board didn't allow an edge rusher to get there. And so the Cardinals cannot leave this up to chance. They cannot leave this up to the chance of the board playing out to them. They can't leave this up to chance of picking the right guy and having that guy hit the ground running. They can't leave that position up to chance in 2025. It has to be a slam dunk, no doubt, grand slam. That's what the Cardinals need to do this offseason at that position. 480-864-1060 is the phone number if you want to hop into the conversation. Also on the YouTube stream, KDUS AM 1060 over there as well if you want to watch the show. Maybe you're getting done being in the car after going out and getting your lunch. You return to the office. You want to stay in lock with the show. Well, you can do it via the KDUS AM 1060 app for the audio, or if you want the video version of the show and you want to interact over there, KDUS AM 1060 on YouTube. Back into the Suns on the other side of the break, because has the Suns' dream of landing Jimmy Butler hit the biggest and, let's be honest, most obvious snag? I'll tell you that next in the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. No, it couldn't be. Couldn't possibly be. It's really difficult to pull off a 4 or 5 team trade. It's really difficult to move somebody with a no trade clause. Who would have thought that? Welcome back in the lunch break. KDUSA M1060. We appreciate you being here. And it looks like after all the talk yesterday, Jimmy Butler trade, Bradley Beal off to Milwaukee, a 4-team trade that had the Heat involved and the Suns and the Bucks and the Bulls and Zach LaVine and then a 5th team and just all of that. Feels like we've hit a little bit of a road bump. What could that road bump be? You don't need to listen to me. How about you listen to Chris Haynes?
Chris Haynes with another Haynes brief for you today. Contrary to popular belief, I was just informed that the Milwaukee Bucks have not inquired about Phoenix Suns star Bradley Beal. In fact, it was explained to me that a connection between the two is non-existent. So if Phoenix is able to acquire Jimmy Butler, it would not come via the Milwaukee Bucks taking on the star guard.
No, wait a minute. I thought this was done. I thought we were just crossing T's, dotting I's. This is why we have said from the get-go. We might need to pull the audio from like November when we first started talking about this, or December. And I have been on record. Now, I've changed my tune just because of how long we've been at this. It's one of those things I've just been worn down over time. But if you remember when these rumors first started, what did I say? I looked into this camera, into this microphone, and I told all of you, it's not happening. There's too many hurdles. There's a no trade clause involved. You have to find a place that that Bradley Beal wants to go to, and 2, a team that wants to take on Bradley Beal. And everybody's been pointing at Milwaukee. Oh, they're the team. They're the team. Doesn't look like they're the team anymore. Now, you have other reports that are calling this report from Chris Haynes untrue and that Milwaukee might just be posturing, trying to get more out of a draft, in terms of draft picks in a trade. Who knows? Who knows at this point? What is a smokescreen? What is real? Who knows at this point? We are in the deep waters of this Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler saga. So anything is possible. Anything could be on the table. But the beautiful thing about sports talk radio is we get to play these hypotheticals out. So let's go on this journey together, everybody. Let's take everything at face value. There is a non-existent link between Bradley Beal and the Milwaukee Bucks. So let's play that out for a second. Let's take that completely off the table. Milwaukee is not in play. Where are we going? Who are we trading Bradley Beal to? Is there another team that you've heard, rumored, that would be interested in Bradley Beal? Every example so far that I've seen of this, since the Suns did what they did on Tuesday, has included Milwaukee. So now, you need to get a brand new team into the mix. And that brand new team might not line up in the same way that Milwaukee lined up in terms of assets. Remember, in this reported or just thrown out there rough draft of what a deal might look like, it had Chris Middleton as one of the main pieces going to Miami. And so Miami probably liked that because they were interested in Chris Middleton. Well, now, if Milwaukee's out, you have to have a new team that joins the fray that all of a sudden has the pieces that Miami wants. You now have made it more complicated. Guys, this is why 4, 5, 6-team trades, they don't happen regularly. It's difficult enough to make a 2-team trade happen. It's difficult enough to do a 2-team trade where a player has a no-trade clause. You're now adding more teams, and you're now adding a no-trade clause into the mix. It becomes more complicated. And there are conflicting reports on whether or not Bradley Beal even wants to waive his no-trade clause. And so, sometimes I feel like the room is spinning. Sometimes I feel like I don't know which way is up and which way is down. There is so much information that is being thrown out there right now. Oh, this team might be interested. Oh, this team might want to move this salary. Oh, this might. You just got to take a step back and you got to wait this out but you also need to look at it realistically. And what is the most realistic outlook right now when looking at this situation? Bradley Beal's contract is unattractive. Bradley Beal's no trade clause is an obstacle. Bradley Beal's availability is a question mark. Did he not play last night because they were working on a trade, or did he not play last night because of an injury? Which one was it? Certainly doesn't look like it's because of a trade, right? Certainly doesn't look like it's because that they're close to a deal. Looks like it's because of the ankle again. And so if you're a team that is interested in this, if you're a team that wants to go down this road, you look at this and go, I have to take on another 2 years at $50 million. I have to take on a guy who is going to miss a bunch of time. And what are you giving me to do that? Why do you think we have been on this from the get-go of how difficult this is? And everybody after Tuesday, and myself included, because you can see it on my Twitter account, Chris Schubert _. The moment that the Suns did what they did on Tuesday, I tweeted out, this means there's more coming. Because I just connected the dots. You don't move the 2031 unprotected first unless you've already got a bunch of other stuff lined up ready to go. Unless you're ready. Maybe they're not as ready as we thought they were. Maybe they didn't exactly have something lined up. So you have to find a suitor for Bradley Beal. You have to find a place that Bradley Beal, and let's be honest, I wouldn't fault Bradley Beal in the slightest. He has no reason to do the Suns any favors right now. He has zero obligation to the Phoenix Suns because they are showing zero obligation to him. They moved him to the bench. They are not shutting down any trade rumors that are out there surrounding him. So if he wants to make this difficult, if he wants to say, you know what, I'm good. I'm not going to waive the no trade clause at all. I like it here. I like living in Scottsdale. I like living in Phoenix. I like the weather. My family likes it here. I like the salary. I like the $50 million. I'm not going to go someplace else. I'm not going to go someplace that might be cold. I'm not going to go someplace where I'm not going to win. I'm good. I'm content. Because everyone goes, oh, why wouldn't he? Team's making him feel unwelcome. Okay. Getting paid $50 million. I'll take a guess. Bradley Beal probably has a really nice house. Probably has a really nice lifestyle. He doesn't need to upset that apple cart just to make Matt Ishbia happy, just to make the Suns a better basketball team. He doesn't owe them that obligation. Again, they're not really doing him any favors right now. He doesn't have to do them any favors because it is in his contract. The no trade clause is in his deal. And the Suns, when they traded for him, took this on. They took this responsibility on. And so that's part one. Part two is making sure Miami's happy, because we're going to talk about this in hour number two. They suspended Jimmy Butler again. He got another 2-game suspension because he missed a team flight. He was late to the team flight. We'll dive into what that whole situation is about, and it is a warning sign. I will tell you that right now. It is a big warning sign. That coming up in hour number two of the program. But you then also have to make Miami happy. And I'm here to tell you, Pat Riley does not look like a guy that feels any real obligation to do this in a hurry. He probably would like to rid himself of this cloud that is hanging over his organization right now between now and February 6th. He would like that to be done. But has he shown an urgency? He needs to do what is right for the Miami Heat organization. And if he does not feel like he is getting value back for Jimmy Butler right now, because remember, there's that rumor out there, that report out there, that Jimmy has threatened to opt into his deal next year to help to facilitate a trade. So if Pat Riley knows that, and he knows he's ultimately going to trade Jimmy in the summer because he knows he's going to opt in and he's not going to lose him to free agency, Pat might call the bluff. He might say, I'm not trading you between now and February 6th unless I get what I want. And if I don't get what I want, maybe my needs will change, my wants will change in the summer, but I'll wait until the summer. This is a mess. And yet it feels all roads lead back to one thing and one thing only. Can you find a place for Bradley Beal? We've talked about this week how interesting it's been that the Suns haven't gone to Bradley Beal to get him to waive his no-trade clause. They haven't presented anything to him. I don't think it's interesting or weird anymore. It's very clear. They haven't gone to Bradley Beal to get him to waive his no-trade clause. They haven't embarked on those conversations because there's no conversations to have. There's no team willing to take on that contract. There's no team willing to take on the no-trade clause. There's no team willing to take on the availability issue with Bradley Beal. There's nobody. And so if there's nobody, then there's no Jimmy Butler. There's no fixing this Suns roster. And if we get to a point where February 6th comes and goes and Bradley Beal stays on the Phoenix Suns and Jimmy Butler stays on the Phoenix Suns, we might look back on the decisions that the Suns made on Tuesday, January 21st, to trade their 2031 unprotected pick as one of the biggest mistakes in franchise history. If they do not get this done, and they don't get a postseason run this year with Jimmy, who cares if they do it in the summer? Who cares if they do it down the road? If they made the move that they made on Tuesday, which was clearly an indictment of where they wanted to go, that they wanted to get this done because they wanted to give it a run this year, if they waste that opportunity, we talked about them setting themselves back a decade by trading for Jimmy Butler. They might have set themselves back just as much with what they did on Tuesday. 480-864-1060 is the phone number if you want to hop into the conversation. Coming up on the other side, we wrap up hour number 1 of the lunch break. They're still dreaming of Jimmy Butler. While they're doing that, did they just have one of the worst first halves in all of the NBA? That's next on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Welcome back in the lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. Appreciate you being here, wrapping up hour number 1 of the program. And everybody's past the midway point of the season in the NBA, so you You can hand out some grades. You can say, oh, this team did great. This team didn't do so well. This is what this team needs to do in the second half. And that's exactly what Kevin Pelton did over at ESPN. He gave out grades for all 30 teams in the NBA, and he admitted expectations matter here. What you are expected to do impacts your grade. And I will tell you, one team got an F. That team, the Philadelphia 76ers, who before the year had a preseason win projection of 49.5, and now at the midseason point have a projected wins of 34.4. So a big F. The worst grade, obviously, that you can give. There were two teams that were given at least a D. One of those teams, the Phoenix Suns, who in Kevin Pelton's mind got a D-, meaning there was only one team in the NBA that he thought had a worse first half than the Phoenix Suns. A D-. Preseason projected wins of 49.5. Right now, mid-season win projection, 40.9. 9 losses worse, or 9 wins worse than what their preseason projections were. And Kevin points out everything that you already know. A $216 million salary, $168 million in a tax bill, a team that has been in and out of the last playoff spot. The NBA gives out playoff spots like they are, and no ill will to the kindergarten community, but they give out playoff spots like they're participation trophies in kindergarten. I'm sure my parents have a bunch of those awards that I got for not really doing a whole lot in kindergarten. They're in a box somewhere, okay? You just get stuff. Oh, Timmy, you got through a whole day without crying. Here's an award. Oh, Susie, you didn't throw the mashed potatoes today. Fantastic. Here's an award for you. I mean, you just get, for being on your best behavior, you get stuff in kindergarten. You get an award. It's the way the NBA hands out playoff spots nowadays. 20 teams make the playoffs. Phoenix Suns have been in and out of being one of those 20 teams with a $216 million payroll and $168 million in luxury tax payments. Do some quick math. That's around $400 million that they're going to spend on this team to not potentially make the playoffs. Remember what we told you, fourth hardest schedule in the second half of the season. So yeah, they deserve a D-. Yeah, their win projection total goes from a 49 to a 40. Have you watched the team play basketball? Did you watch them against Memphis? Did you watch them during this road trip? Did you see what they did against Cleveland? Yeah, I would project them to not win many games. That's 18 more wins the rest of the season. So I see the D-, and I see it just laid out there. The numbers, the $168 million in the luxury tax, the $216 million payroll, the fact that this team spending all this money to potentially barely make the playoffs. And I keep coming back to this one central question about this team. Why? Why are we jumping through hoops to try to get Jimmy Butler? Why are we trying to bend over backwards and do backflips to save this season? Why? Kevin Durant and Devin Booker have been here for a couple of years together as a unit. I'll sit back and wait. 480-864-1060 is the phone number. If somebody can point out to me the good thing that's happened since the two of them have gotten together, the memorable playoff moment, the nice run that they went on. I can't leave the silence for too long because then it'll think that we're off the air. So I can't leave the silence for as long as it probably deserves. There'll be a flashing blue light in producer Dylan's studio if I just don't say anything for 15 seconds. Hasn't worked. And so with a team that's one game above 500, oh, yay, they beat the Brooklyn Nets last night. They got their blowout victory. They're one game above 500. One. We want to jump through hoops to get Jimmy Butler. Why? Because that's the answer. That's the magical fix. That's going to all of a sudden fix Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. That's all of a sudden going to fix a team that under those two guys hasn't really amounted to a whole lot of anything. I know. The word rebuild is not allowed in the building. I understand rebuild is like a word that you can't utter on radio, right? There are a bunch of words that I'm not allowed to say on radio. That's how the Suns treat the word rebuild in their building. That you're not allowed to say it. We're not retooling. We're not rebuilding. We're not tearing it down. None of that. You're not allowed to say those words more than likely. I get it. You're spending this much money on a team. It's one game above 500. That has one of the hardest schedules in the NBA in the second half. You have absolutely mortgaged everything for the idea of getting Jimmy Butler because you've crossed the line. You traded the 2031 unprotected first. You got to see this through. You got to make something happen with those picks. You got to do something with them. You have to improve your roster in some way, even if it's not Jimmy Butler. You got to do something because you've decided. You've made a commitment. We're not giving up on this season. So whether it's Jimmy Butler or somebody else, you got to do something for this team with those 3 picks that you acquired. And I keep going back to why? Why? Why do you need to do that? What about this team tells you that things are going to be different if Jimmy Butler gets here? These are just grades in a story, but they got a D-. Only one team is viewed as having a worse first half than them. And I'm here to tell you, the company you don't want to keep here is the Philadelphia 76ers. That's not elite company to have in this conversation. And yet the Phoenix Suns don't seem to see all of the same things that you and I see. They don't seem to see the same things that we've been talking about for weeks. They are just full steam ahead. They are just runaway train. They are just barreling down the highway. And so, sure, you can still dream of Jimmy Butler. Sure, you can still dream of getting out of Bradley Beal's contract. Sure, you can still dream of trading Yusuf Nurkic. And some of those things you might be able to do. You might be able to do all of them. You might be able to do none of them. Who knows what you might be able to do. But why are you doing them? You think the season's salvageable? You think this season is savable? Because let's put this in its proper prism. You can't just do all of this and make the playoffs and be a first-round exit. You can't do all of this and win in the first round and then get bounced in the second round. You are doing all of this. You are going to pay over $380 million this season to win a championship. We told you on Tuesday, you're not even close. You're not even close to a championship caliber team. You're not close to Cleveland. You're not close to Boston. You're not close to Oklahoma City. You're not close. You're not close with or without Jimmy Butler. There's a reason why you have a D-. There's a reason why, and I haven't checked today, so we'll do our, you know what, maybe we should come up with some cool music for this. Yeah, we're going to produce the show on the fly here. I love this. I need some cool music for our daily check into what the Suns' playoff odds are depending on the day, depending on the result. Because remember, it was yesterday that we told you that their playoff odds were a whopping 5.6%. Now, they won last night. So do we think that their odds changed a little bit? Ah, yes. Massive increase. They went from 5.6 to now 8.7%. Do you know that on Pro Basketball Reference, which is where I'm pulling these numbers from for the playoff probabilities, they have everybody's probabilities to win the conference and to win the championship. And obviously you have Oklahoma City, 65.7% chance to win the conference, 48.5% of the time they win the finals, right? All that stuff. The Phoenix Suns, they don't have a percentage for winning the conference or winning the finals. There's no probability. Of the 10,000 simulations that were done through the remainder of the season for the Phoenix Suns, they never win the conference and they never win the finals. And they only make the playoffs 8.7% of the time. Their most likely seed is the 10 seed, 17.1%. That's where we're at today. So we don't have to do this today, but producer Dylan, just work on finding us some nice music that we can use to give everybody their daily update on the Phoenix Suns playoff odds. Because that's where we're at. 67.6% of the time of these 10,000 simulations, the Phoenix Suns are out of the playoffs. Out. Now, maybe, just maybe, we'll be fair here. Let's see if ESPN has maybe some different numbers. Maybe they have some odds that are different. Now, I'm trying to produce on the fly here. This is a terrible decision by me. I'm just clicking buttons. Now I'm all of a sudden, I'm in a different story. I'm on a different sport. I'm in the NFL page. This was a bad idea by me. See, I had a great idea with the music, and then I decided I was feeling it. I'm like, I'm going to double down and do another idea. And now I'm looking at some NFL news story of the Cowboys hiring a new potential head coach. I clicked the wrong button, and I'm down a rabbit hole. But you get the point. This team doesn't have a great chance of making the playoffs. They don't have a great chance of winning a championship. And so that team is the team that's going to go all in. Not Oklahoma City, who actually has a good roster and a good chance and has played well this season. Not Cleveland. Those teams aren't the teams that are going to these great lengths the way the Suns are. It's the Suns. It's a team that's one game above 500. It's a team that right now is barely holding on to the 10 seed in the Western Conference. That's the team. Remember, the Sacramento Kings who fired their head coach in front of the Suns in the standings. Just want to keep reminding everybody of that. Hour number one of the program in the books. 480-864-1060. Always the phone number for you to hop into the conversation on the other side. Hour number two. He was suspended again. Is it another 4D chess move? Or is it a bad sign for the future? Next, the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Hour 2. Welcome in. Lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Chris Schubert with you. We've got you one more hour here today on the program. Jim Rome coming up next. The Miami Heat have suspended Jimmy Butler once again. This time not for 7 games, but for 2 games. They have suspended him for what they are calling a continued pattern of disregard of team rules, insubordinate conduct, and everybody's favorite, conduct detrimental to the team, including missing today's team flight to Milwaukee. According to Shams Charania, Butler was planning on joining the Heat Wednesday after missing the flight, but they will be playing without him. They play today against Milwaukee, and they play Saturday against the Nets, although I don't know. Producer Dylan, maybe you can check on this for me. I know Milwaukee was having a tough time getting out of New Orleans because their game got postponed because of the snow there, and there were question marks of whether or not they were going to be able to play the game tonight for Milwaukee. So he is suspended for this game, but he might not actually miss it because they might have to move it. I don't know if they've actually done that, but that's where we're at right now. But so he's suspended for the next 2 games, and he just returned on Friday. So less than a week after serving the 7-game suspension. So less than a week from coming back from a 7-game suspension, he has been put back on the shelf, suspended for 2 more games, potentially tonight against Milwaukee, Saturday against Brooklyn. And it looks like they're trying to find a way, and this is the interesting part of all this. They're trying to find a way to solve this. They're trying to find a solution, but they keep playing him, so that tells me that they're not close. Like, obviously he was out for the 7-game suspension, but when he came back, he played. And so it doesn't look like they're close. And so here is the question. Did Jimmy Butler truly miss that flight because they changed the practice schedule and he was unaware and he missed the flight and he was always planning on joining the team? Is that really what happened? Was this just an honest mistake? Or is this a 4D chess move by Jimmy Butler to continue to poke at Pat Riley, to continue to poke at the Miami Heat, to get what he wants? And we all know what he wants. He wants to end up on the Phoenix Suns. Now, that's great. He may want to be a member of the Phoenix Suns. In fact, Pat Riley may drive him to the airport so that he can go to Phoenix. That's where Pat Riley might be at right now. The Phoenix Suns can't take Jimmy Butler until they figure out what they're doing with Bradley Beal. So this is you could be doing all of this, and the Heat might be okay with you doing all of this, and they're okay with all this nonsense because they want to help you facilitate the trade. But they can't trade you if there isn't a trade proposal put in front of them that makes sense. And the Suns can't put a trade proposal in front of them until they solve the Bradley Beal part of this equation. So that's just one angle to what Jimmy is doing. But here's the other angle. Is this just a disgruntled guy that wants out of Miami and he's making life difficult there in Miami and then he's going to become a model citizen when he gets here to Phoenix? Or is this a warning sign that we should all look at? I think this is the ultimate buyer beware. Now, is there another place that's going to give Jimmy the contract that he wants other than Phoenix? No, I don't think so. He clearly wants to be in Phoenix to play with Kevin Durant. So is it possible that things are okay? Sure. Things were okay in Miami, though, for a while, too. Things were great. Jimmy was awesome. Playoff Jimmy, right? Took the Heat to the finals. The bubble year, the COVID year, he took them to the finals where they lost to the Lakers. The Miami Heat, since he has been there, have been that pesky team. It didn't matter what seed they were. You were afraid to draw them in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And just like that, instantaneously, all of that goodwill, all of those good times can evaporate like that. And so while I think he's going to get the contract, and that's really what he's doing right now, and he wants to play in Phoenix, and if he comes to Phoenix and he's where he wants to be, and so you would assume that checks a lot of boxes. Okay. When he got to Miami, everybody thought that checked a lot of boxes. Up until it didn't. Up until he changed his mind. Up until Jimmy didn't want to be in Miami anymore. Up until Jimmy wanted to be in Phoenix. Up until Jimmy wanted to play with Kevin Durant. And so he might come to Phoenix to great fanfare. He might come to Phoenix and be welcomed, and he might be happy, and he might not be a problem, and there'll be no missing of team flights. There'll be no suspensions. There'll be none of that until there are. Until he is disgruntled. And so let me put it this way. You can make this trade with all of the expectations in the world that what he is doing in Miami is directly correlated to him wanting out, and so he wouldn't pull those antics here in Phoenix. You can choose to go into it with that mindset. If I was a member of the Phoenix Suns front office, all I would say, I'd raise my hand in the meeting and say, listen, we can do this. We're kind of committed to doing this, but we can't be surprised if this then happens to us. You can't think that you are the team where he's not going to act like this, where you're not going to have this type of situation. So you want to make the trade, fine, but just know this comes with the territory. You're going to trade for Jimmy Butler. Don't be surprised if in 2 seasons, if things aren't working, he might want out and he might cause issues. That's all I'm saying. This is buyer beware. You can do it, but just know it's like when you buy something off of like Facebook or something, as is, you can't return it to the person. Like once you commit to this, you're getting everything with Jimmy Butler. The good, the bad, you're getting everything. And so as long as you know that this is a possibility, as long as you know that this is absolutely something that could play out, because I'm sorry, I do not think all of a sudden he's never going to cause a problem here in Phoenix. I'm sorry, I do not believe it. So he might be playing 4D chess. He might be just trying to do ruffle feathers and try to poke the bear and try to force Miami's hand here. He might be trying to do that. But if he's doing it to Pat Riley, what's to say that he wouldn't do it to Matt Ishbia? What's to say that he wouldn't do it to Budenholzer? What's to say he wouldn't do it to the Phoenix Suns? You have zero evidence that you can put in front of me to say that he wouldn't do it here. Zero. None. So both things can be true. He can be trying to kind of poke the bear to force his way out, but also it doesn't it doesn't end when he leaves Miami. That baggage comes with him. That thought needs to be in the back of your mind always. That at any moment, Jimmy could decide he doesn't want to be here anymore. And if he does, you have to deal with all of the consequences that come with that. Producer Dylan, yay or nay? Have they postponed that game yet, or no? Is it still up in the air, or where's our status here with that? Is it still on the schedule? Okay, cool. So still on the schedule technically. Don't know if they're going to postpone it yet. Okay. They were having trouble potentially getting out of New Orleans, so that was the thing that was going to hold that game up. So if they play it tonight, then that would be game 1 of his suspension, and then we'll see if that game does get played. But that would be game 1 of his suspension tonight. So we wait. We sit back and we wait. I played you the cut in hour number 1 of the show of Chris Haynes. Milwaukee's not interested in Bradley Beal. Non-existent connection between the two. So we wait. Because all this Jimmy Butler stuff doesn't happen unless Bradley Beal happens. Unless that trade goes through. And so Jimmy Butler can get suspended. Jimmy Butler can cause all the problems that he wants to cause. He may want to be in Phoenix. But like I said, does not happen. Doesn't get over the finish line until the Suns do their part of the deal. Their end of the bargain. And their end of the bargain is to trade Bradley Beal. And so where we sit today, a little after noon, January 23rd, 2025, is where we were 3 weeks ago, is where we were a month ago, is where we were 6 weeks ago. This team has to trade Bradley Beal, and they need to find a suitor, and it's crickets. They're not queuing outside the door like it's a going out of business sale, and everybody's trying to get cheap electronics. It's not Black Friday where you got the doorbusters and everyone's just queuing up outside at midnight the night before on Thanksgiving to line up to get into the store. Although I don't know if we do that anymore, but you get the point. They're not lining up to trade for Bradley Beal right now. Not a lot of suitors coming to the table. And so you can't get Jimmy Butler unless you get rid of Bradley Beal. And so between now and February 6th, the hardest part of this is going to be the Bradley Beal part of it. And the more teams you add, the more complicated it gets. And the more teams you add and the more complicated it gets, the more time it takes. And let's face it, there's a countdown. They don't have a lot of time left. They have until the 6th. And they have 39 games left on their schedule. If they're going to pull this off, and they're going to land Jimmy Butler, and they're going to trade Bradley Beal, you want to play the most amount of games that you can with Jimmy Butler on the team. So there is urgency in this. So Jimmy's not playing tonight. He's not playing over the weekend. Is this the perfect window of time for the Suns to get this done? They don't play until Saturday. Jimmy's not playing for Miami. Is there enough time for these two teams to circle the wagons and get this over the finish line? Truthfully, the ball is in James Jones's court. The ball is in the Suns' front office court. The ball is in Bradley Beal's court. They have to get that side of this done. So less than a week back from his 7-game suspension. Here you go, 2 more games for you there, Jimmy Butler. 2 more for missing a team flight. I don't know anymore. Is he trying to do this? Probably. Do I believe that he, just missed the miscommunicate? I don't know. I don't. You just don't know at this point. You don't know what is a player just pulling all the strings and playing 4D chess, and you don't know what's truly real at this point. 480-864-1060 is the phone number for you to hop in on the other side of the break. One of the main pushbacks on making a Jimmy Butler move and trying to go for it here over the next couple of years has been the age of the Suns core. Are we worrying too much about it? Well, one member of that group tends to think so. I'll tell you who it is next. Lunch break, KDUS, AM 1060. Welcome back into the lunch break. Age. It has been one of the main focuses of my pushback to the Suns doing what they are doing. We outlined it in a social media clip yesterday. Every year beyond this year, it gets harder and harder for the Suns to win a championship because these guys get older and older. Jimmy Butler gets older. Kevin Durant gets older. Devin Booker gets older. Just the core ages. And at some point, you just don't have guys in their prime or still with a championship level left in the tank. Well, story in Yahoo Sports, Vincent Goodwill, senior reporter over there, got some quotes from Kevin Durant about his future. And Kevin Durant said that he's not a regular 36-year-old. Quote, I conditioned my mind, my body to be a pro, so what else am I going to do? Burn out? How many people playing at this level at my age? So you can't compare me to anyone who's burnt out. It could happen, but does it look like it right now? End quote. And so you appreciate Kevin Durant not shying away from his age, not shying away from father time, not shying away from that question. But I think he's missing the point. Because maybe I did a poor job of not emphasizing why I feel the way that I feel about the age thing in past conversations. But I'll outline it here today. I'm not worried that Kevin Durant is going to all of a sudden fall off the face of the earth and no longer be the superstar Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant, over the course of his career, is constantly reinventing his game. He is not the same guy that came into the league. He is just a prolific scorer and gets to his spot and hits shots and is constantly reinventing himself. He's a student of the game. He's always trying to get better. I'm not worried about that. But here is what happens when you age as a player. Here's what happens when you get older. You know how Kevin Durant on a pretty regular basis is scoring 25 to 30 and on a pretty regular basis is going into the 30s and he is constantly leading the way for this team? Remember, we threw a celebration a couple of weeks ago because somebody other than Kevin Durant led the team in scoring, right? As Kevin Durant gets older, as Jimmy Butler gets older, what goes isn't your ability. What goes isn't your talent. What goes is your consistency. What goes is your ability to do it every single night out. And so you'll still be able to talent-wise, ability-wise, drop 30. I don't, for a second, question Kevin Durant's ability to do that into his 40s if he wanted to. But what's going to go is he doing it every night? Is he doing it every other night? Is he doing it every 3 games, every 5 games, every 7 games? That's when the age catches up to you. That's when the age becomes a problem. Because if you buy in to what the Suns are doing right now, what the Suns are trying to sell you of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Jimmy Butler, they can't afford Kevin Durant every 5, every 7 games to be dropping 30. Or for Jimmy Butler, every 3 games, every 5 games to be dropping 30. Those guys have to lead the way. Those guys have to be the anchors. And so when I talk about age dooming this team, and I talk about it getting harder and harder, it's because the consistency is going to go. And I'm already dealing with a player whose availability is up in the air. And do you think it's going to get easier for him to avoid injuries as he gets older? Do you think it's going to be easier for him to play as many regular season games? Even if he stays relatively healthy and he doesn't miss time, he's going to have to take more regular rest management games off throughout the course of the season. It's not a talent question. It's not an ability question. It's not a basketball IQ question. That stuff for Kevin Durant, he could play until he's 45. Truthfully, he can play until he's 45. LeBron James, perfect example. He's still doing incredible things this late in his career, right? But the problem is, can he do it every single night out there? Or is there a question of burnout? Or is there a question of, listen, we've got to get you time off because you can't do this. And so Durant says, I'm not going to get burnt out. I'm not worried about you getting burnt out. I'm worried about you just not having the consistency anymore. I'm worried about being 37, 38 years old, coming back to bite you. Aaron Rodgers came back from an Achilles injury for the Jets and had a great second half. There were some games he looked lost. There were some games he looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And then there were other games where you saw the old Aaron Rodgers. Why? Coming off of a major injury, and he's 40 years old. Father Time has gotten everybody. If you want to say that the one person that beat Father Time was Tom Brady because he went out at however old he was and threw for nearly 5,000 yards, or I think eclipsed 5,000 yards, okay, I'll give you that one. But Tom Brady, the outlier of all outliers. Father Time gets everybody. Father Time is going to get Kevin Durant. And guess what? Father Time is closer to getting Kevin Durant with each passing day. And with each passing day that the Suns don't win a championship is another day closer to Father Time potentially getting Kevin Durant. It's why this high-stakes game of all-in makes no sense to me. Do we expect Kevin Durant to be the same player next year that he was this year? Do we expect Kevin Durant 2 years from now to be the same player that he was next year? Now, maybe the Suns don't want to see this through all the way. But let's go in the Wayback Machine. Do you remember a segment that we did on this show when Matt Ishbia sat down with Shams Charania of ESPN and said, Kevin Durant's not going anywhere? This was when the Houston Rockets thing was popular, and he said, no, not going anywhere. We're signing him to an extension. He's going to be here for a long time. He's going to be a Phoenix Sun. He's got one more year on his deal after this one. So if you sign him to an extension, that means you're going beyond next year. You're going another year. So at least 2 more seasons, right? The end of this season and then another season, and then an extension would be at least another one, probably another 2. So you're looking at least 2.5 years. Where's Kevin Durant 2.5 years from today? Where is Durant 2 years from today? January 23rd, 2027, if Kevin Durant is still on the Phoenix Suns, is he still the same Kevin Durant that we're watching play right now? Or is he still Kevin Durant, but only some of the time? Not all of the time. And guess what? As a second apron team, the Suns don't have the ability to build a roster to support an aging, inconsistent Kevin Durant. They have the roster right now that needs to be lifted up by Kevin Durant. There's a difference. Right now, Kevin Durant can lift up the Phoenix Suns. Will he be able to do that for the remainder of this window that the Suns are trying to compete in? Or will the Suns need to lift up Kevin Durant? And if you trade for Jimmy Butler and you give me extension and you give Kevin Durant an extension, I don't know where that support is coming from. Remember, you don't have your own draft pick for the next 7 seasons. You don't control your own draft fate for the next 7 drafts. So you better have the best scouting department and player development department in the NBA to get guys in the latter half of the draft, the back third of the draft, and to be able to turn those players into very important players for your team. Right now, Kevin Durant lifts up the Phoenix Suns. In 2 years, will he be lifting them up, or will they need, that being the rest of the team, need to lift him up because it's just inconsistent? Again, there is no questioning the ability and the pure, raw talent. That's not going to fall off the face of the earth. It's just the consistency. One night it's going to be awesome, and then the other night it's going to be 37, 38-year-old legs that are just tired. And then the next night it could look fine. That's what happens when you get older. That's what happens as you age. Things that you normally could do, you could do one day, and then if you try to do them the next day, you can't do them. And then 2 weeks from now, you're fine. That's what happens. And so I point this out, and I talk about the age in reference to where this team is going to go moving forward, because I just don't see how the roster and how the team is going to be in a better place next year or in a better place 2 years from now than they were last year or this year. And if this year they're 22-21, 1 game above 500, what does it look like in 2 years? What does it look like this time next year? What does it look like? Because Kevin Durant this year is averaging 27 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. That's what he's averaging. Now let's look at last year. Last year, 27.1. The year before that, 26. His last 2 years in Brooklyn before that, 29 points. So he's been relatively consistent. But at some point, it might fall off. And not in a he all of a sudden doesn't know how to play basketball anymore or can't drop 30. It's just the consistency that I worry about. I'm done talking basketball today. We did a lot of it yesterday. We did a lot of it today. We're going to take a break because Suns don't play until Saturday. Tomorrow, we're going to focus a lot on the conference championships. We'll give you the how the upsets get pulled. We got a nice football Friday for you. We've got picks to make tomorrow. We're going to have a good show tomorrow that, unless they trade Bradley Beal or Jimmy Butler in the next 24 hours, is not going to be fully basketball focused. So, on the other side, we're going to talk some baseball because Tanner Scott, he's in L.A. Kirby Yates looks like he's going to L.A. So, what's left if the Diamondbacks want to pursue a bullpen upgrade? That's next in the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. We spent so much time focusing on the basketball as of late. It's a baseball team that's going to start here in a couple of weeks. Pitchers and catchers are going to report. Spring training right around the corner. Then before you know it, the season is going to begin, and the Diamondbacks' pursuit of the Los Angeles Dodgers in the National League West will be underway. Well, the Dodgers have been pretty busy, and they recently have added some pitchers. No, I'm not talking Roki Sasaki or Blake Snell. They added Tanner Scott. They look like they've added Kirby Yates, although we're still waiting for that to ultimately become official. I think that's a roster issue right now for the Dodgers because they're trying to clear some roster spots. And those are a couple of the top options that were available in free agency, at least as it comes to relief pitchers or closers. And the Arizona Diamondbacks, we said they had a couple of needs this offseason. Needed to get a first baseman. If Christian Walker was going to leave, check. Josh Naylor. They needed to get a DH because Jock Peterson was leaving. I think they're going to go in-house with that as of this point because they haven't been linked to anybody else, and I don't know if I love some of the options that are still out there. Then we said, hey, get a third high-leverage reliever. Give yourself 3 guys in the back end of your bullpen that you trust. The 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, you feel, boom. We got Justin Martinez, we got A.J. Puck, and we've got whoever that free agent signing was going to be. Well, the Diamondbacks haven't really got out of their way to pursue anybody. Jeff Hoffman's up in Toronto. Tanner Scott to the Dodgers. We mentioned Kirby Yates, Aroldis Chapman, Blake Trinan, Chris Martin. All these guys off the board, right? These top options. So you're left wondering aloud, is that still the plan? Is the plan still to get a reliever? Is the plan still to add one more arm to the back end of that bullpen? It certainly should be. Listen, I love Justin Martinez. I think he's the future closer of this team. I believe he's going to be the closer this year. I think that stuff plays in the 9th inning in the high leverage spots better than anything else that they have. The command is obviously a problem, but I don't know how many pitchers in baseball you know of that throw a 100-plus mile-an-hour sinker, okay? It's not many. There's not a lot of guys that have that kind of movement and that kind of speed on that kind of pitch. Like, that's elite level stuff. That's a guy you want in the 9th inning or in a high leverage situation in the postseason facing the best of the best because I've got the stuff that can get you out. Good luck. So I'm all in on Justin Martinez. And I know it was an up and down roller coaster ride. I know it was up and down. He didn't have necessarily the best command. But that's the stuff that plays the best. And when you need a reliever, when you need a closer, when you need a shutdown guy, you lean towards stuff. You lean towards the arsenal. Do I have the swing and miss? Do I have blow it by you? Do I have the, I can throw this right here. You know it's coming. It's still going to beat you. That's what you need out of the closer. So Justin Martinez, the closer of this team. I think A.J. Puck is the perfect setup man, whether it's for the 7th or 8th inning. I think that lefty arm is super valuable to be able to get out a tough lefty right before the high leverage spot, potentially in the 9th inning to close the game. I thought he was great since coming over here in the trade. What a great trade by Mike Hazen to go out and get a reliever to help them for the run last year, although it came up short, but to get a guy that had control beyond last year. And so now you've got your bullpen. We told you last year Paul Sewald was going to leave, right, in free agency. You had the in-house options. You got A.J. Puck. You got Justin Martinez. Boom, you're good. You're ready to go. But you need that third piece. And so is that still the plan? It certainly should be. You need one more. And bullpens they're all over the place. You're going to have guys that are going to come out of nowhere. And you have guys who I think can probably handle that role if you wanted to go in-house, right? If you were going to have Justin Martinez be your closer, if you were going to have A.J. Puck be your lead setup guy, who can be that extra setup guy? Kevin Ginkel feels like he fits in that role. We've seen him do it in the past. Ryan Thompson feels like he could sit in that role. You've got options in that bullpen that I think you could turn to. And you know with bullpens, there's going to be guys that they call up from the minors. There's going to be guys that they sign to minor league deals here right before spring. And it might not be the big ticket item. It might not be the big closer. It might not be Tanner Scott or Kirby Yates. It might not be one of those guys. But they might bring somebody in. So who's left? Well, if they wanted to go big game hunting, David Robertson is available. And all of these guys have pros and cons, right? David Robertson, the con is 40 years old, right? And so does he still want to pitch? How much juice does he have left? Is he one injury away from being done? When you get guys that are that old, it can kind of very quickly, if one bad thing happens and they miss a couple of months, that might be it. But has experience of being a closer, has experience of being a setup man, is a experienced veteran who's been in the league 15 seasons, 15 years of service time in the big leagues. There's value in that for a young closer like Justin Martinez. You then have Kenley Jansen, 37 years old. Again, a guy who's been a closer. You've seen a lot of him. You've seen a lot of Kenley Jansen as a Diamondbacks fan. You know what you're getting. Are you getting what he was with the Dodgers? No, you are not. But a nice veteran piece to be the right-handed side of maybe a setup platoon with A.J. Puck. And he's a veteran. It's nice. Carlos Estevez, 32-year-old. So the pro there that's the youngest of the options that I've named so far. He is probably also going to cost the least in terms of value. And last year, with both the Angels and the Phillies, pitched to a 2.45 ERA. Didn't have a ton of home runs. Had one of the best years of his career in home runs per 9. Increased his ground ball rate. Did all the things that you want to see a pitcher do. And he's 32 years old. Projected contract, 2 years, $18 million. So $9 million a season to get you a veteran setup guy. Also a guy who's been a closer in the past. So there are still options out there. There's also some second-tier options. Maybe a reunion with old friend Andrew Chafin. Maybe you take a flyer on a Craig Kimbrell, Tommy Kahnle, guys who have been closers in the past, who have that experience. Again, I think you go into the year with Justin Martinez as your setup guy. But I think you'd like to have an in-house veteran option where if things get bumpy and you need to turn to somebody for a series or two to kind of help right the ship, you have a veteran in-house. And so that's what I think they're going to lean towards. Somebody who is maybe older, maybe doesn't need to be the closer, but has that experience in the past, can check that box, but also gives you another elite setup option. And there are names still out there. The fun thing about bullpens is you can just look all over the place, and there's just guys. There's just guys always available. You're going to sign somebody to a minor league deal or a spring training invite, and then all of a sudden they're going to have a great spring, and somebody that you didn't think was going to be a part of this bullpen, or you didn't think was going to make the team, or you didn't even or you don't know who they were 3 days ago, all of a sudden is going to be a part of this bullpen. And maybe, just maybe, Mike Hazen has a trick up his sleeve. And maybe, just maybe, Mike Hazen might swing a trade for a reliever. Maybe there's a team that's trying to free up a roster spot. Well, the Dodgers are doing that. I don't know if they would trade within the division. Maybe there's another team that just wants to shed a little bit of money. Pay half of a reliever's salary. And Mike Hazen can swoop in and say, hey, we'll take that reliever off your hands. Hey, we'll add that guy to our bullpen. And so it's quiet, and I don't like that it's quiet because I truthfully think this needs to be a priority. I think this needs to be the last thing they do this offseason. But so far, they haven't done a whole lot. So far, they have not pursued this avenue just yet. It's been Corbin Burns. It's been Josh Naylor. That has been the big ticket shopping that the Diamondbacks have done. And you can't complain, but I just think they're missing that one additional piece in the bullpen that would make me feel a little bit better when the rotation hands things off to those guys. Just another veteran, another option who also probably has a closer background just in case Justin Martinez isn't up to the task in the early going. Because, listen, you got to hit the ground running. I'm full belief that the Dodgers, I know health's going to be a big question mark, but I truly think the 2001 Mariners record is in play. And the Mariners that year went 116-46. It's the regular season record for wins in a season. I truly think the Dodgers could be in play to win 117 games. Now, again, there's health that's a concern. They have a lot of that stuff that's going on. But talent-wise, they have a chance to win 117 games. So you got to hit the ground running. You can't have a week or two where your closer's giving games away and you don't have anybody else that you can turn to, kind of like where they were last year. So I'd like to see, before we get to the end of the road, before we get to spring training, before we get to the start of the season, them add another reliever. The good news, lots of names out there. And it might not be a sexy name. It might not be Tanner Scott or Kirby Yates, but it will be a name that I think checks the boxes. Veteran, closer experience, solid setup option. One more for us here on today's edition of The Lunch Break, a heavy football-themed edition of The Leftovers. We got hirings. We've got firings. All of it for you. Next, the lunch break. KDUS, AM 1060. How about a heavy football-themed edition of The Leftovers? If you're new here, the end of every show, we take all the stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. We talked about nachos earlier this week in The Leftovers. We throw it all into this one segment, and it is just rapid fire. It is story after story. We don't just keep it to one topic or to one specific team. We bounce all over the place, and I give you quick thoughts on all of that. It's how we end every single day. And we set you up for Jim Rome at the top of the hour this way. So a lot of football, a very football-heavy theme. And we will start in Jacksonville. So yesterday we learned that Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator in Tampa, had withdrawn his name from consideration. So he interviewed with the Jags for the job and voluntarily said, I'm good. No thanks. NFL job, 1 to 32, not a lot of them. Interviewed for it. Gets a chance to work with Trevor Lawrence, which, no offense to Baker Mayfield, but that's an upgrade. And he said, I'm good. Why did he say I'm good? Well, might have something to do with the general manager who was there, Trent Baalke. And you know what the Jags did yesterday after losing out on what was probably their preferred candidate, who was probably the leader in the building of who to hire? They fired Trent Baalke. So now the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were already one of the teams still remaining in pursuit of a head coach, are also a team that is now in pursuit of a general manager. And they just did this backwards from the word go. Trent Baalke was not a very good football executive. Trent Baalke was going to limit the pool of coaches that were going to be interested in taking that Jacksonville job. And you didn't need Liam Cohen to withdrawing his name to know that. And so you allowed this process to go on. By the way, Shad Khan, the owner of the Jags, in the press conference after they fired Doug Peterson, talked about Baalke on the press conference and said, "Listen, I'll make whatever moves necessary, to make this team successful." Basically, throwing the GM right under the bus, saying, "I'll get rid of this guy if he doesn't fit with what we're trying to do." And so, if you knew then that that was a possibility, why didn't you just clean the slate from the get-go and put yourself in a position to hire a general manager and then hire a head coach, and you probably just missed on the guy that you really wanted to work with, Trevor Lawrence. Backwards from the word go. Bad organizational leadership. How does a team that has Trevor Lawrence fail as much as the Jags have failed? This is why. Because they do things backwards. They do things in this type of order. So now they need a GM, and they need a head coach, and they're going to continue their head coaching search. They're doing some second interviews. I'm sure they'll bring some other people in for interviews, and they are right back at the get-go, right back at the beginning. We told you yesterday that it was looking like the Jets were going to hire Aaron Glenn as their next head coach. They did do that yesterday. They made it official. Reports of a 5-year deal for Aaron Glenn. And so now the Jets have taken themselves out of the head coaching search. So the Jags still in there. The Saints still in there. The Raiders still in there. The Cowboys still in there, although that might not be for very long. We'll get to that here in a second. And so now the Jets will continue their GM pursuits. As they've hired their head coach, they bring Aaron Glenn home, former Jet, played there in the 90s and early 2000s under Parcells, started his coaching career there as a scout, worked his way all the way up to defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and now is going to return home to lead the next chapter of the New York Jets. They're going to now look for a GM, and then they have to make probably the most important decision that they make all offseason, what they do with Aaron Rodgers, and the cascading effect that could have in the quarterback market altogether, because if they don't want Rodgers back, but Rodgers still wants to play, that is potentially a wrench. I don't know how many teams might be interested in Rodgers' services, but he would at least probably cause some pause for some of these organizations. So the Jets hire a coach, the Jags fire their GM, and it looks as if he has to explain this one to me. Because the Cowboys talked to Deion Sanders about their head coaching gig. And everybody was like, all right, I get it, but not sure that makes some sense. Not sure if it actually happens. And I thought that hire would have been weird. I thought that rumor was odd. How about this rumor? How about the Dallas Cowboys are close to an agreement that reportedly could be done in the next 48 hours to make Brian Schottenheimer their next head coach. They met with him yesterday for 5 hours, according to Jane Slater of NFL.com. That was their second interview with him. He's been with the Cowboys for the last 2 years as the offensive coordinator, has never been a head coach before. Only twice in 14 seasons has the offenses that he has overseen finished in the top 10 in yards. And the Cowboys looked at all of that and they said, that's the guy. That's the guy we want to be our next head football coach. We fired a guy that was here because we were not happy with the status quo. And we're going to promote from within. We're going to promote a guy that's already been here. Brian Schottenheimer, you're up. Your turn. I don't get it. I need somebody to explain it to me. If this is what you were going to do, you should have just come to a contract extension with Mike McCarthy. Because if this year goes south, I think Brian's just going to become a very easy scapegoat. And they're just going to fire him and then they're going to go to somebody else. So why wouldn't you? Now, maybe this ties back into the contract dispute between McCarthy and the Cowboys. McCarthy probably wanted a little more wiggle room because his deal was expiring and didn't just want a 1 year or 2 year extension. He probably wanted something a little bit longer, and the Cowboys weren't interested in doing that. And they want to keep some continuity. They don't want to have to learn a whole new offense under Dak. And so their solution, because they're just not very good at this, is, okay, Brian Schottenheimer, you're up. You might be able to be a better head coach than you are a coordinator. It's possible. But if Brian is going to be the guy that instills the offense, and he's been there for the last 2 years, so you would expect that he's not going to change a whole lot to their offensive philosophy, I don't know how you can be excited if you're a Cowboys fan about what your future looks like. You're going to waste this era with Dak. You're going to waste it. Now, Dak bears some responsibility in all of that, but I don't think you've helped him with your coaching decisions. I don't think you've helped him with the coordinator decisions. Kellen Moore was the betting favorite as of, I think, last night and early into this morning, with Schottenheimer a close second. But Kellen Moore was the betting favorite to return back to Dallas and to be the head coach, and makes a ton of sense. Those bets have been taken completely off the board. They're off the board. Can't bet on them anymore. Why? Because it looks like Brian Schottenheimer is going to get promoted from offensive coordinator, where he's been for the last 2 years for Dallas, he's going to be promoted to head coach. Okay. Going to keep some continuity? Fine. So be it. Did the Tennessee Titans spoil what they're going to do with the number 1 overall pick? This was the quote from Chad Brinker. And you might be saying, Chris, who the heck is Chad Brinker? Well, I'll tell you. He is the Titans president of football operations. Quote, "We won't pass on a generational talent with the first pick in the NFL draft. We won't do that," end quote. Is Cam Ward a generational talent at quarterback? Is Shedeur Sanders a generational talent at quarterback? Or is it the two-way Heisman Trophy star who was an elite corner and also an elite wide receiver? When I think of generational, I think of a guy who played a ton of snaps on both sides of the ball and was elite at both. When I think of generational, I kind of think of that type of player. A guy who played 2 positions, was a shutdown corner and also a number 1 wide receiver. Generational is a guy who is playing every single snap out there. That's generational to me. Well, I'm not the only one who thought that, because after that comment yesterday, Travis Hunter went from 15-1 on ESPN Bet to be the first pick in the NFL draft. And not just an ESPN Bet, but a bunch of different sports books. His odds moved all the way to plus 150. So there were a lot of people that saw that news and said, oh, they're taking Travis Hunter. And I'll tell you, before I saw this movement in the odds, when I saw the quote, my immediate reaction was, they're going to take Travis Hunter? Like, that was my gut reaction to the news, is he's talking about Travis Hunter. Now, I don't know if they come down with a generational grade on Cam Ward. It's possible. I think Cam Ward is the QB1 in this draft class. I would go out of my way, if I was a team wanting to move up, I would do anything, truthfully, to land Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward is a stud. I think Cam Ward has the playmaking ability. I think Cam Ward has the big arm. I think Cam Ward has the mobility. I think he has everything. I think he checks all the boxes. He does have that, I'm always looking for the big play and I need to learn to just take what's in front of me. But I think his ball handling skills, the mobility, the extending plays, I think he's special. So I wouldn't use the term generational, but I can see how you can get there. I can see how you could get to a place where Cam Ward is that for you. So I'm not ruling it out, but my gut reaction when I saw the quote of we're not going to pass on a generational talent, my immediate thought was not to say, oh, they're taking Cam Ward, or oh, they're taking Shedeur Sanders, or oh, they're taking Abdul Carter. My immediate reaction to hearing that quote is they think that Travis Hunter can be a two-way sensational star in the NFL. That's what they mean by generational. That was my gut reaction. Now, they need a quarterback. So if they grade these quarterbacks close to Travis Hunter, I don't know how you don't take a quarterback if you love him. If they go through this process and they love one of these two quarterbacks, I don't know how you pass on them when you need a quarterback and you have the number one pick, and this is your chance. It is not a guarantee in life that you're going to have the number one pick and have the entire board available to you to be able to pick a quarterback. So if you love one of these kids, if you love one of these guys, you need to make that selection. And now, if you don't, that's when you can allow Travis Hunter to enter your thought process. But I just don't see a world where if they love one of these two quarterbacks, that they're not taking Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders at number one. I don't see any other way. So the betting market can shift and make Travis Hunter the favorite to be the number one overall pick. I'll believe it when I see it. Titans need a quarterback. And unless they're just going to completely say, we don't think either of these guys can be pros, we don't think either of these guys are slam dunk quarterback talents, I think that's the only way you take Travis Hunter. And I just don't believe it. I'm just not sure. Again, my gut reaction when I saw the quote was they're talking about Travis Hunter, but I won't believe it until I'll see it. Now, Cam Ward's odds went from being the odds-on favorite at minus 180 to a toss-up at minus 105. Right now, the odds according to ESPN Bet, Cam Ward minus 105, Travis Hunter plus 150, Shedeur Sanders plus 350, Abdul Carter plus 900, and Teteroa McMillan plus 6,000. The odds to be the number one pick in the NFL draft right now, according to ESPN Bet as of today. Appreciate everybody being here today. You missed anything? Make sure you check out the Lunch Break podcast feed. Both hours are there. You can catch up on anything. Make sure you check out the KDUS AM 1060 app and the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube page. Producer Dylan, thank you for all that you do. Jim Rome is next. Everybody, have a great rest of your Thursday. We're back, Conference Championship Football Friday edition of the show. See ya!